Data on organizational behavior suggests that moral and ethical actions are rarely the results of cold logic. People do not execute these choices by simply following a set of calculated rules. Social information processing theory, or SIP, provides a better explanation. SIP describes how environmental cues, specifically the actions and expectations of leaders, dictate which behaviors an individual perceives as appropriate. When observers encounter a leader demonstrating high ethical standards, like Martin Luther King Jr., they process that behavioral information. That processing triggers a specific class of other praising moral emotions, states like elevation, inspiration, and awe. These specific emotions serve a mechanical function. They generate the cognitive energy required for a follower to translate an abstract moral standard into a physical ethical action. This emotional reaction serves as the mandatory bridge between a moral belief and a completed behavior. The same affective bridge exists in market environments, but it can also power unethical choices. Violating a moral standard often relies on the same generation of positive emotion. The global counterfeit market illustrates this paradox. Every year, millions of consumers knowingly purchase illicit goods, choosing to violate their own stated moral principles during the transaction. Traditional theories explain this through moral rationalization. This is the idea that consumers justify their behavior by cognitively redefining the harm they cause, or by blaming the original brand's high prices for the existence of the fake. However, rationalization is highly cognitively demanding. It requires significant mental resources and forces the consumer to confront a potentially negative view of their own self-concept. Most consumers lack the mental stamina for constant rationalization. Instead, they use moral decoupling. This involves separating judgments of a product's morality from judgments of its performance. Decoupling removes the cognitive friction from the choice. It transforms what should be a taxing mental dilemma into a psychologically effortless purchase. This diagram details the formal architecture of how moral decoupling bypasses cognitive costs to facilitate a purchase. The process begins with domain dissociation. The consumer isolates judgments of a product's morality from judgments of its economic utility. Reconciling conflicting data across different domains requires high cognitive complexity. For example, a person must expend significant mental effort to want a product while simultaneously knowing that product is stolen. By separating these domains, the consumer avoids that mental effort. This creates a state of low friction known as processing fluency. The brain's metacognitive monitoring interprets this rapid processing fluency as error-free safety. It instantly rewards the consumer with positive affect. Buying a counterfeit feels good because the brain rewards the consumer for not thinking about the moral contradiction. Researchers used a 356-person quasi-experiment to test this effective mechanism and determine if emotion truly drives these purchases. The study examined 4 heavily counterfeited product categories, ranging from athletic wear to high-end accessories. The data confirmed a specific mediation pathway. Moral decoupling leads to positive emotion, which directly generates a purchase intention. Researchers isolated the effect by controlling for traditional moral rationalization. The data showed positive emotion carried the effect even when justification was removed. These findings prove that the feeling of cognitive fluency operates independently of moral justification. Emotion acts as the primary engine for market complicity. While effective, the processing fluency generated by moral decoupling is fragile. It is vulnerable to several specific environmental moderators. The first boundary condition is price advantage. The decoupling mechanism fails at extreme levels of discount, such as an 80% price reduction. Massive economic incentives shift the cognitive framework toward pure self-interest. The obvious gain becomes so significant that the consumer no longer needs to decouple domains to feel safe in the transaction. A second study examined the remaining moderators using a high-value counterfeit market, smartphones. Brand attachment, or H3B, proved to be a significant barrier. Strong emotional ties to an original brand's identity force the consumer to evaluate the moral damage done to that specific brand. Category involvement, or H3C, creates a similar effect. When a product has high personal relevance, it triggers a central processing route that forces the consumer to perform deep cognitive elaboration. When internal brand attachments, or external incentives, force a consumer to think deeply, processing fluency shatters and the intention to buy collapses. This research provides a new foundation for the defensive brand strategies used by original manufacturers. The counterfeit market has a core vulnerability. Its entire appeal relies on the consumer's ability to maintain cognitive efficiency and avoid deep thought. Traditional approaches, like lecturing consumers on ethics or highlighting legal risks, fail because they assume the consumer is already engaging in a difficult moral calculation. The more effective strategic objective is to reintroduce cognitive complexity into the decision-making process. Disrupting the mental ease of a transaction is a more reliable way to stop counterfeiting than simply appealing to a consumer's baseline ethics. This practical application is known as strategic coupling. Original brands must inextricably link their high-performance features to their ethical manufacturing processes in all positioning. The goal is to make it cognitively impossible for a consumer to evaluate product quality without simultaneously evaluating the product's moral origin. This forced integration consumes cognitive resources. It replaces the feel-good processing fluency of the counterfeit with high-friction cognitive labor. The counterfeit market thrives because of processing fluency. To defeat it, we must weaponize cognitive friction.